for being so patient to get the main course. After a very quick and fruitful exchange of opinions with the Grand Master, Amr Musa, we changed a little bit the schedule of our being on the floor. And he suggested me it better have people being hungry for our thoughts that be angry at us because they are not having a main course. So that's the reason why we started in here after the main course was served. Having said so, I'm very honored and privileged. Jeffrey Sachs is in the process of waking up, and he's going to be with us because he's in New York at his home, and he will be joining us on this session that is devoted to the climate change and sustainable development. I have the privilege and honor to be moderating this, and of course, there is no reason to make big introduction, not only about Jeffrey, but about Maria Espinosa, former president of UN General Assembly, to be more precise, 73rd president of UN General Assembly, and dear friend Nathalie de Gaulle. She's a partner and co-founder of Société, among other things. So we have someone who is representing very rich experience from a government as former foreign minister of Ecuador and former defense minister of Ecuador, but as a strong promoter and known person in multilateral world. And of course, Natalie is representing NGO sector, but NGO that is also connected with business. So these are the two things that are, let's say, present with us in here. And of course, Jeffrey represents Jeffrey and his thoughts. You never know what Jeffrey is going to hit us today with, so we will wait and see until he wakes up. So in order to proceed with today's panel, I would very proudly ask my dear friend Maria to take the floor and take a few opening statements about our topic. Maria, please.
Well, thank you, Zlatko. It's really a privilege to be here. And my question to you is, you prefer to talk about climate change or eat a 66% black chocolate mousse? That's, I think, the dessert. And so we apologize for that. So instead of the chocolate mousse, then you will have to perhaps listen to us. So, and I'm very pleased that we are sharing this space with a voice from the private sector. I truly believe that there is no climate stabilization alternatives without the engagement of the private sector. So very happy to be here. And I'm going to basically a few opening remarks on three key issues. One is the human face of climate change. Sometimes I have been involved in climate negotiations for more than a decade. And sometimes you get so, lost in translation in a way. The line, the target, the percentage, the negotiation. And we tend to forget, who are the people that we are working for. And when we say the human face of climate change, of course, climate change is disproportionately affected the most vulnerable, including women, rural women, indigenous women. And extreme weather events are already causing 60,000 deaths every year, pushing 26 million people into poverty every year. And with these trends, experts say that by 2050, climate change will forcibly displace more than 140 million people. So what are we going to do with these climate refugees? What are the strategies? What are the policies? And basically, as we speak, Glasgow, COP26, is taking important decisions. And basically, to address, this is the second part of my opening remarks very quickly, what are the gaps that we need to close as we speak? In mitigation, there is a gap of approximately 80% in climate mitigation with respect to, of course, what is necessary to meet the 1.5 degrees by 2030. So it is obvious that we need to scale up and speed up the mitigation commitments And for that, we need to really refresh and renew our nationally determined contributions, meaning the national plans, the planning of the macroeconomic planning of our countries. Number two, climate finance. In Cancun, we agreed $100 billion for developing countries by 2020. This hasn't happened. Now we are, experts are saying, well, 100 billion per year for developing countries is not good enough. We need trillions. So where are the resources going to come from? People say only public funding, but I strongly believe that the private sector has a stake. And perhaps my third and in final opening remark is that we are given the opportunity for a reset. We are speaking about rebuilding back better, recovering from COVID. Industrialized countries have put, $16.7 trillion for COVID recovery. And if you look at all that money, only 438 billion will be invested in low carbon investments. So there is a lot to do. There is a lot to do. And we said before earlier that there is a disconnect between pledges and policy in action. But there is also, I would say, a big weakness in global climate governance. I won't go into the details, but perhaps in the second round, I can go more in depth to what I mean by global climate governance and the multilateral response to the climate emergency. And the truth be told, if we don't get our act together, a strong multilateral response to the climate crisis, it is not only bad for climate, for the victims, but it's very bad for the multilateral system. This is a huge test for multilateralism, to tell people that it's worth, that it's fit for purpose, that international law, international environmental law has to be complied with, and it's useful and it's necessary. So I would leave it there, and back to you, moderator.
Thank you, Maria. Of course, now without further introduction, I would just turn to Natalie to give opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you, dear Zlatko. Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here to be speaking at this prestigious event. They asked me to prepare a 10 minutes address, and because I'm a very good student, I prepared a 9 minutes address. So I'm going to read it to you, and I hope that we can pursue the conversation based on this prepared address. So first of all, of course, let me thank you, the Nizami Ganjavi International Center, for organizing this inspiring session and to be co-organizer of this global Baku Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, if the pandemic has confirmed the interdependence of the world population, it also reminded us that the only lasting responses to sustainable development goals depend on the cooperation. The environmental challenges that humanity must face are linked. They are obviously fight against climate change and the preservation of biodiversity. So today, I would actually like to focus this address on biodiversity, knowing that all the actions against climate change are currently being discussed in Glasgow at the COP26. And we all know that courageous measures are being taken by the states as we speak. So on biodiversity, according to the scientists, we're experiencing the 6th mass animal extinction in the history of planet. But unlike the others, this is only linked to human activities, deforestation, overfishing, pollution, and global warming, of course. Unfortunately, as you know, the trend is accelerating, and we will have lost an eighth of the species, by 2050. To fight against these disasters, of course, we are working in connection with the UN, and we have courses of action and several axes of work. Some are part, of course, of international political strategies with supranational legal aspects. You're all distinguished former head of states, former head of governments, you know that very well. Others represent very concrete objectives and involve a flawless mobilization of the private companies, which for me, according to me, is a very structuring trait, the partnership between the state, the private sector, and the civil society. So those concrete objectives are of several types. First, when you reclaim biodiversity, you need to slow down the urban sprawl, which is fragmenting natural, agricultural, and forest areas, and directly contributes to the degradation of the ecosystems and to the erosion of biodiversity. Second, you need to protect and restore nature in all its components, the endangered species, of course, the soil biodiversity, and the oceans, which as well implies international cooperations and international solution. Third, back to the economy, back to the private sector, build an economy without pollution and a low impact on biodiversity. That is, for instance, ending plastic pollution, making the agriculture an ally of biodiversity, and mobilize company with CSR approaches. So if I may just try to be quick about that, because it's an area I'm working a lot on, it's a corporate social responsibility. So as you know, it's a concept in which companies integrate social, environmental, and economic concerns in their activities and in their interaction with the stakeholders. They adopt ethical and sustainable practice. Stated otherwise, it is a contribution of the private sector to the challenges of sustainable development. We all know that the citizens' expectations are growing in terms of environmental concern. CSR criteria are increasingly present in everyday economy, and citizens are now looking for solutions to consume better. Just an example, in February 2020, a month before the pandemic, a European study showed that 90% of the European citizens today expect companies to help them consume less and consume better. So there's a very interesting and important approach to these coalitions, and we can talk maybe about that later in the further discussion. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Natalie. And I was just informed that there were some technical problems with the sound. Some people up there in the second part of the room. Do we have Jeffrey online? We do have Jeffrey? Nope. Is he with us? Elaha? Yes. Do we have him? Nope. Okay, so let us know when he, let's say, get ready for. And Maria, of course, hoping that Jeffrey is going to be online very soon. It reminded me when 2 years ago I was talking on a table about Jeffrey 2 years ago was supposed to come to Delphi Forum, and he was supposed to come to Delphi Forum on the way from New York to Sarajevo. And we had a similar problem as we spent all day because Jeffrey couldn't come to Sarajevo and to Delphi, but we said, okay, wake up in New York at 4 o'clock in the morning and be with us. So we were all very, very anxious. Is going to Wi-Fi internet technology works from Sarajevo to New York. So we double checked everything. We had 2 double connections, everything. And when they asked me, the people from technology, they asked me, what do you want, basically? I said, I want, if the line doesn't work, that we have technical problem in New York, not in Sarajevo. So it looks like we have technical problem in New York, not in here in Baku, in Azerbaijan, because everything is working so smoothly, and hope that New York will fix the technical problem, so Jeffrey will be with us. So before New York sorts out the technical problems, I would like, Maria, that you give us some of your thoughts about global climate change governance issues that you announced in your very interesting briefing from the beginning.
Well, thank you, Chair. It's also very promising to see these partnerships with the private sector. I think that next year, 2022, has to be the year where humanity reconciles with nature. And I'm saying this because next year we will have the Biodiversity COP, the Oceans Conference, the Desertification Conference, and yet another Conference of the Parties on Climate. The question I'm asking here is, who monitors performance of countries and of societies of implementing the commitments made in all of these international multilateral agreements? You know that there are more than 1,000 multilateral environmental agreements, but there is no way, to ensure accountability, transparency, delivery. The multilateral system suffers from a trust and implementation deficit constantly. And on the climate area, there are a myriad of very interesting proposals that are out there. Some only, to refurbish and improve what we already have. There's some discussions about upgrading the UN Environment Program and transform it into an environmental regulatory global agency. And there are, discussions on that. As we speak, there is a process of negotiation of a global pact for the environment, precisely to bring all these hundreds of multilateral environmental agreements, put them together and establish like a universal reporting and compliance instrument. These issues might seem boring, but they're extremely important in our performance. And number three, there is also a very interesting proposal on the establishment of a Global Resilience Council that basically would put into play the concepts of human and planetary security together, meaning that the UN, the multilateral system, will deal with non-military threats to human security from a different stand. And that's why there's a group of people working on the possibility of this Global Resilience Council. And these are not just let's create more institutions, but let's be more accountable, let's be more efficient, more coherent. We are given the opportunity to what I said, to reconcile with nature and to do things differently. I think that I said this morning that climate change is not the problem, it is a symptom of I would say, a fractured relationship between the economy, society, and nature. And these are the things that we need to fix profoundly. We have the technology, we heard, some better than others, the hydrogen, the removing carbon from the atmosphere, renewables, etc. There's a long list of options that are out there. We have the resources. We know that the resources are out there. We are lacking capacity, technology transfer to developing countries, of course. But why is that we cannot do things better? And here I remember something that we heard from our co-chair one day in one of the conferences. He said, video conferences, he said, why is that, as humans, we go to the doctor, we're told that we need to lose weight, that we need to diet, that our life depends on that, and yet we are unable to do it. And I remember vividly that from you, and I keep repeating that because it's true. So I think this needs a whole of society approach. It is not only the leaders or the negotiators in Glasgow. This is a whole of society commitment to decrease our carbon footprints, to really be conscious about lowering our demand for carbon. I think it's extremely important to look at production and consumption patterns, are our own lifestyles. And when this happens, to keep in mind the the most affected by climate change, small island developing states, rural women for that matter. And the connection in climate, it is not a standalone problem. It is connected with health security. It is connected with food security. And we are going to have an excellent panel this afternoon on food systems and food security. We cannot have a Band-Aid piecemeal approach to that. So we truly need to mend the broken connections between society's economy and nature. And I would leave it there.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Thank you very much. It looks like they fixed it in New York, okay? So Jeffrey is going to be with us because technology... See, Jeffrey, great. So it's great to see you, Jeffrey. We were just, we knew that it was not up to you, it was some technical problem, and probably the communication is going bad in New York. Here, everything is okay. I mean, so don't worry. Every time
wish I were there.
We wish too. We wouldn't have technical problems if we were here. So we had, Jeffrey, I mean, very extensive discussions yesterday that were dealing with emerging post-COVID global order, impact of COVID-19 on education, the new world economy. And today we had great sessions that were dealing with combating climate change and meeting the need for energy with Robert Ciacuta, that was moderating that extremely important event panel, very, very interesting one. Then we're discussing about public health and people vaccine, chaired by Susan Elliott, with very distinguished people on it. And right now I'm eager to listen. You won't be able to be with us, but we'll provide you with a link, and you will be able to be with us if you won't be able to have extremely interesting panel on promoting food and nutrition security that will be chaired by our co-chair and our last Leonardo Ismail Serageldin, with a very distinguished group of people on that panel. Of course, you know, every time when I'm introducing you, there is no need to introduce you, but I start every time that now we have with us Jeffrey Sachs, who is one of the two top contemporary world economists. And a lot of people have reaction, who is the second one? So every time I have the same question. So I won't name the second one, but no one is complaining when I say they're among the top two. So you have to prove yourself in here and to say a few words about our topic on climate change and sustainable development. Today we were discussing, and Maria was just tackling that issue, just opening that. But there is the money, there's a strategy, there's SDGs, unanimously acceptable, there is money around, technology is there. And we had in one of the previous sessions, someone concluded that what is missing is political will and proper leadership. So we have all saying in our part of the world, because there are a lot of people from Balkan here, if there is a will, then there is a way. So the question is how we will provoke the will to go along the way that is already there. So to make a long story short, before the line gets canceled, in here, I feel like you are someone who is calling us and saying, Houston, we have a problem. We fixed your problem with technology. So Houston is here, mission control room is here. So Apollo, could you just respond to us?
Okay, Zlatko, thank you very much. Greetings to everybody, and really warm thanks for including me. Sorry for the delay in updating my Zoom to get into the meeting just now. We probably even have a will as well as a way, but we don't have the institutions that we need to get the job done. So what I think we're observing is the birth of new institutions and new approaches to handle global scale challenges. We are a world of nation states facing a world of global challenges. The pandemic is a global challenge. The word itself means that the disease is everywhere. And I think we have seen that we have failed as a global society to fight the pandemic because it has been fought at the level of each government pursuing its own politics, sometimes wisely, sometimes unwisely, but not in global solidarity and cooperation. The virus has spread, the Delta variant spread worldwide, the imbalance of access to vaccines has been painfully evident, the lack of international planning, the weakness of the WHO in the face of this. All of this, to my mind, reflects the fact that nation states cannot adequately address a fast-moving global pandemic. For that, we need strong multilateral institutions. We don't have strong multilateral institutions. We have important multilateral institutions. I think everyone in the room knows how much I love the United Nations, but it is not a strong institution because the major powers, especially the United States, have never wanted the UN to be strong because the powerful nations want the prerogative, and they think that this is to their advantage. It is not to the US advantage to have a weak multilateral system. We have 750,000 people dead in the United States from COVID, in part because the multilateral system is weak. Well, climate change is really no different. This is a global challenge that requires a global control of fossil fuels, a global transformation to renewable energy. The technology pathways are relatively clear. The more you study them, the more clear they are. But we are addressing this, of course, as 193 separate sovereign nations. And so everything that's happening in COP26 just now is who will sign on. So maybe there's an agreement, so-called, to phase out coal. But then the United States, China, India, and Australia say, no, thank you. And so they're out. And on each of the measures that's being identified every day now in the COP, whether it's fighting deforestation, committing to net zero by 2050, as we need to do, and so on, you have a varied assortment of governments that say yes and others that say no. And the global process is extremely weak. This past weekend was the G20 meeting, which is another interesting example of this. The G20 is the 20 large world economies, 19 national governments plus the European Union. It represents somewhere between 80 and 85% of world output. In a way, it's an impressive process. 20 world leaders sitting around the table, deliberating in a serious way, I would say, over 2 days, and reflecting a year of meetings at the ministerial and technical level to talk about global problems. Thank goodness, that's good. But when you see what comes out of it, that's bad, because there are lots of smart commitments, dozens, by the way, lots of pronouncements and communiques and wordsmithing. That's good. But when you read them, they are exhortatory, they are urging, they are setting objectives without timelines. Most importantly, they are setting objectives without finance. And as an economist, I can tell you most of what we're talking about is the allocation of resources. And that requires deliberate decisions on how our budgets and financial institutions work. So this is the problem, that we actually have more or less a will among global society. In the United States, a large majority of Americans want to move to renewable energy, but we're broken institutionally for a number of reasons. I've emphasized one reason at the global level, which is that nation states don't cooperate properly on global problems. Multilateralism is weak. It's less than 100 years old. Actually, we're in the 100th year of the opening of the League of Nations just now, and we're in basically the 76th year of the United Nations. But these are new from the point of view of human political institutions, and they're weak. Then you have really the corruption of power. So the reason that multilateralism doesn't work primarily is the great imbalance of power in the world. If we were all vulnerable individual countries, we would actually cooperate more easily. But since we have a powerful few countries that are more interested in competition with each other than they are in addressing global problems, they don't give up their sovereignty. You know, I complain a lot about my own country, the United States. I think the US is one of the great blockades to solving global problems. It's not a leader, it is retrograde. It is a blockade. The US, and it's a blockade for two reasons. One, the United States is not truly interested in multilateralism unless it's in charge. So it keeps the UN weak. And second, because it's powerful, it thinks it can get its way. And then I can tell you at the national level within the United States, our politics are profoundly corrupted by big wealth and power. And so the rich don't want to share even with other Americans, much less with the rest of the world. And this then cascades into the facts on the ground, such as the US not signing the coal agreement yesterday. Well, President Biden probably would want to sign, but he's trying to win a vote of Joe Manchin from a coal state of West Virginia, a state of 1.7 million people. But Manchin holds the balance of power in the US Senate right now, and he is striking out the environmental policies of the Biden administration. Then the Biden administration doesn't support the global scene. So you have a cascade of these crises. So this, to my mind, is the basic situation. My theory of change is that we need to identify clearly, rigorously, daily what we need to do. And in that sense, COP26 is helpful. The G20 is helpful. The analytic processes are helpful. We need to show there is a way, there is an urgency, that there is a will in terms of global public opinion. And then we need to refashion our global institutions. And I think the main thing we need to do is to help the United States, China, Russia, and other major powers understand that their own narrow interests cannot be fulfilled except with strong multilateralism. And this is not the thinking in the United States power elite, because they don't understand the world that we're in. They're still fighting a Cold War from 75 years ago. They can't wait to fight a new Cold War with China. So they're just outmoded in their thinking. And that's why forums like the Baku Forum are so important. We need to understand the barriers, the obstacles. We need to create a 21st century multilateralism. And then we will link the will, the way, and the institutional means to solve these problems. Time is short. I think we'll get there if we don't fall into a disastrous trap of war in between. That's what worries me more than anything else. If we stay peaceful, stay talking, I think we'll figure this out. Back to you, Zlatko.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. This looks like mission impossible, what we did now under these circumstances, technical circumstances here in the kitchen and here, I mean, in the room. And I really want to thank you, Jeffrey, for being so early with us. And I want to thank my dear colleagues and friends, Maria and Natalie. And I will do something which I'm sure a lot of you will be very thankful to me. We will close this session. So in order to be able to just stretch your legs before 2:45, when the new session will start, and I'm eager to listen, my dear friends, and especially I have to uncover you a small secret. Adel El Beltagi, who is among the panelists, one of the most prominent persons in the world, that is, when we are talking about food in every aspect of that, meaning he's the only one. When he walked in, his main course was waiting for him. So the food was waiting for him, believe it or not. He was the only one who was not being waiting for the food. So which means that he's really expert, and we are going to be witnessing very, well discussion on a topic that is dealing with let's say, problem of food and nutrition security. And I want to thank you once more, Jeffrey. Don't worry, I mean, Apollo, you are okay, you are in good hands. Mission control from here is going to land you safely, and we'll proceed hoping that very soon we are going to meet each other next year. We hope that COP26 is going to end fruitfully, and your call for institutions, strength of institutions, something that is common denominator of all panels and a lot of discussions that we're having in here, especially we established one new NGIC mission, and you as a special advisor to NGIC, I'm sure you will be part of our endeavors to make a proper call for action for new institutions, strengthening in context of the new multilateralism that Amr Moussa is sharing among us. And that will be something that I'm sure that we will be talking about, hoping that next year UN Climate Change Conference, COP27, will be dealing in being in less press situation, hoping that that will be held in Egypt in November next year, as it is preliminary announced, hoping that in 2023 we'll have a UN summit on future 2023 that is aimed at strengthening our common ability to protect the global commons. And we hope that as alliance of like-minded people and entities, what NGIC is, as a platform of people and entities who really want to make this world being better in every aspect. Everything we heard yesterday on lunch, how Wendy Fisher was talking about her experience about getting some people safe from Afghanistan, and showed us that everyone matters, and what we're doing here, you never know how it will pay back the dividends of what we are doing in here, not to us, but for the bigger cause. And that's what this overall discussions are about. So as I said, I'll finish before the beginning of next session that is scheduled, and it's unbelievable. This is the session that is ending on time. And I thank you very much. I know that we're privileged you had to be in this session because you couldn't miss the lunch. So let's hope that you will find interesting sessions in the future. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Go
Bon
back
appetit.
to sleep. Thank you.
Dessert, Mr. Chair, with a 66% chocolate dessert.
Oh, dessert is there. They got dessert. They got dessert.
Oh, okay.
Coffee.